I remember how back in the PS2 era, Sony's big claim to fame was that they would be able to generate Toy Story graphics. Their games would look like the film's Toy Story. And of course, that was a lie. The PS2 was an underpowered piece of hardware. But what's also true and also kind of humiliating is that we already had a video game console generating Toy Story graphics, the Super Nintendo. Buzz Lightyear on Super Nintendo is not only one of the best looking games on the console, it is, bar none, one of the best looking games ever made. The game seamlessly blends together open world gameplay with flight mechanics and action based third person shooter 3D action on a Super Nintendo with Toy Story visuals. All time great video game reviewer George Wood be proud. I can't find any evidence that he played this game because this game, for whatever reason, seems to have fallen into relative obscurity. I don't know why no one talks about this or remembers this, but this was a monumental achievement in video game design in the 90s. The N64 was already out, and yet this thing surpasses pretty much all of the N64's biggest hits. You know, it's better than GoldenEye, looks better than Mario 64, it plays better than Zelda. You know, Disney beat Nintendo at their own game. So that begs the question, why? Why has this game fallen into obscurity? Why is it so hard to find anybody who remembers this game at all? Having played through the game myself several times, I do think it comes down to two very simple concepts. First of all, it's way too short. You know how in like Super Mario Bros, where you get to the end of World 1-4 and beat Bowser, and then you move on to the next world? Like, imagine if you played through a version of that with Buzz Lightyear where you go fight Zurg at the end and then the game just ends. You know, like if you get to Zurg and if you beat him, you'll be done in less than 4 minutes. You know, like speed runs of Super Mario Bros. Take longer than that. It is insane how short this game actually is, considering how good it looks and just how much variety there is in that short span of time. But the second reason this game is so notoriously obscure is the difficulty. Like, you will not be beating Buzz Lightyear without a strategy guide. Like, pretty much everyone I know like tells you you need to get the guide because there's so much about the game that's just not, you can't really figure out, like, you know, how to jump and press the shoot button at the same time, you know, how to reflect the Zerg shots, you know, how to like destroy all those droids at the beginning. Like, this isn't something you'll figure out on a first playthrough. And in fact, the game is so trial and error based that I I don't think it's even really possible to figure this out without a guide. Like, I've certainly never met anybody who says that they've been able to beat this without a strategy guide because it's really really hard. So when you couple that together, when you couple in, you know, the short length and just the how brutally difficult it is, what you have is a game that for the vast majority of the audience, you know, people who don't have the strategy guide, this game is pretty much completely unplayable. So even though it was so technically advanced at its time, even though that they were able to compress this 3D action game onto a Super Nintendo, they simply didn't reach the mass market because, you know, the Buzz Lightyear toys have always been super popular. You know, the TV show was huge. The live action film was a bomb, but like, you know, the video games like Buzz Lightyear is something that should have been right for video game adaptations, but like the company just isn't able to adapt the formula into video games because, you know, you would have to beat Zurg and that would cause all these problems with the lore, and like there's just Like, I don't know. Like, they've never ever been able to make it work. And it's entirely because of things like this. It's entirely because they have never been able to figure out how exactly to balance, like, their cutting edge Toy Story visuals with actual game design, like, and this is the problem with this. Like, if this game was a fully featured, like, say, half an hour long game, it would be a 10 out of 10, one of the best games ever made. It would be like a Super Nintendo classic, but it's not. Like, the simple fact of the matter is, like, for anyone other than, like, tech nerds, people who, like, love games and just obsess over 3D visuals, like, there isn't anything remarkable about this game. This game looks better than anything on the N64 or the PS2, and honestly, even the PS3 for that matter. But, like, if there's nothing really to do in it, if there's nothing, like, really to engage with, like, you're gonna get bored relatively quickly. And I suppose this specific release is the gold standard in how graphics aren't everything. Like, this game was already out when Sony started marketing its console as being able to render Toy Story graphics. And I think it says a lot that nobody even considered that this game was the natural endpoint for that discussion. Because instead of coming up with quality game design, making the game fun to play, or improving on, like, the story, the lore, or expanding, like, the Lightyear universe, like, instead we get this short tech demo that really exemplifies everything we love about Lightyear in a 4-minute frame. But, when those 4 minutes are over, you're either dead or you're seeing the credit scene. Like, it's just unbelievable to me that this game is so technically ahead of its time in so many respects, and yet just completely botches the simplest concept. This is why Nintendo won the console war. This is why, Nintendo's strategies of having less demanding games with more fun gameplay is more successful, because things like this just don't result in products that people actually want to engage with. No one but the most hardcore of Lightyear fans even know that this game exists. And it does need to be emphasized more, like, what this means for the industry, because graphics don't mean everything. Being technically advanced doesn't mean anything. Like, if you don't produce a game that people actually want to play, you are going to fail. And we are going to continue seeing that going forward.